Hey, everybody, Off the Mic Sports Network here. Another edition of Off the Top Rope. Some news here. As per Jonathan Coachman, the coach, on his podcast, he leaked some news saying that Britt Baker is very close to whatever the terms of her situation were with AEW. She's very close to signing with WWE. And that came out earlier in the week. And then Britt Baker on Tuesday on her social media, seemingly her in a sunset. It seems like this is about as close to an indication as you're going to get that Britt Baker is not coming back to AEW. We haven't seen her in almost a year. She showed up for the one match with Mercedes Moné, and I think she might have done some other stuff around that in the build up to All in London last year. And that whole situation was a disaster. It was derailed by some real life stuff backstage. There was no chemistry between the two. Depending on who you want to pinpoint it on, it was a bad look for a lot of people involved there in AEW. And then, she had, I forgot who she was wrestling as she was ill. And then she had another match. And then she was supposed to feud with Serena Deeb. And you could see visibly on camera, and she basically looked right into the camera and said, nobody cares. And I don't know if that was directed at Tony Khan or if that was directed at Serena Deeb or if that was real, shoot, whatever. It wasn't a good look. And we haven't seen Britt Baker. That had to have been, October, November of last year. So we're going on, close to 7-8 months since we've seen Britt Baker on television. She was off for close to a year with some real life health concerns that she documented post Forbidden Door when she returned, and to a lot of fanfare, and a lot of people were excited to see her. Look, Britt Baker is not perfect. Let's get this out of the way first. She is not perfect. I think in some cases she is kind of a little bit overrated for the position that she was in, but there's no dismissing this, what Britt Baker's value to AEW is. And if you're a lifelong AEW fan that's been supporting this company, and despite what you guys think, I've been watching this company, and I try to root for this company. Part of my anger in these segments is because I get so frustrated with what this company was and what they are now. Britt Baker was positioned as one of the faces of this women's division that, had a lot of issues. Some of it was because she had so much control over her situation. But she was a great women's champion. She really was a great women's champion. However, that got passed off to, and how she was able to work with other people within that division is a separate issue. But the fact is, this was one of the first women's signings of this company. Think about this for a second. The two most noteworthy and visible first AEW female signings are probably both going to be in WWE by the end of the year. One of them was Kylie Ray, who literally did not make an appearance. And there's been some stuff out there about her, the way her situation was sold out. She's now involved in WWE, and I hope she gets an opportunity because she's got a very interesting character, and I think she could really do some good. But we'll see how she can progress and potentially, end up ultimately being in NXT and then getting to the main roster. But we'll see. WWE's women's division is loaded. And then there's Britt Baker, who is longest reigning women's champion, or one of the longest reigning women's champions in, I think Kushida was actually the longest reigning women's champion, but one of the most heralded female stars. She got incredibly over during the pandemic. Her win at Double or Nothing 2021 was one of the great moments in AEW history. So, one, the fact that she's probably on her way out is an awful look for AEW. Is an awful look, because you look at this women's division right now, there's talent there, but there's nobody over. Why? Because Mercedes is beating everybody. And for Britt Baker to just unceremoniously get tossed aside like this, and I understand that she may have been difficult to work with, but this almost is starting to feel like a CM Punk situation. And, maybe going to another environment in WWE and getting a chance to work with high-profile women can help her. And she's got a name brand in the DMD brand. And, it's just, man, to see a woman who was front and center for this women's division 6 years ago when this company started, to now not even any fanfare literally showed up at Forbidden Door, had a disaster of a feud in a match with Mercedes Moné. One post-match thing that she said to the camera, she hasn't been seen in almost a year. And now she's probably out the door. Listen, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to be the first to tell you guys that, hey, listen, Britt Baker is the greatest women's wrestler of all time. She's not, but she's valuable. And for AEW to basically not make this work with one of their flag bearers and one of their cornerstones of this division to start this thing off, because they've handed the keys to Mercedes and they've handed the keys to Toni Storm, justifiably so, because Toni Storm has made something of herself in AEW. And then for some people to have the audacity for me to basically say, listen, some people were having the audacity to basically say in reaction to the story, man, I wish her well, but AEW doesn't need her. Yeah, you do. Your main women's match at All In Texas is the TBS champion versus the women's world champion. It may not even be a title for title match. That's how bad your women's division is right now. There's talent there, but everybody's lost. Nobody's got any heat behind them. I'm going to talk about Jamie Hayter in another video here, because that's a whole situation that needs to be discussed as well, because maybe Jamie Hayter's not going to be in AEW for very much longer either. I said it over the weekend. I said it recently. AEW does not care about their women's division. Because yes, there was a lot of drama going on backstage there was some gossip and there was stuff going on with MGF and his girlfriend, Alicia Toot, that led to some stuff that I think is part of the reason why Britt Baker has not been utilized on television recently. But this is truly a bizarre situation, considering how high regard Britt Baker was thought of within this division for the longest time, to now one of the quietest exits you will ever see. And listen, I think she's valuable. I think it's a bad look that she's going to leave and she's going to end up in WWE, because, hey, what she meant to this women's division, like, I don't think she's a better talent and a better wrestler than Mariah May, who's now going to be known as Blake Monroe. Mariah's got room to grow, and she's already scary good in her mid-20s. Britt has been around this division for a while and been around women's wrestling for a while. She's fine, but she's not the greatest to ever do it, and I think she could turn into a good piece to the WWE women's division. Like, the way that I'm looking at this is from the AEW perspective. This is a bad look. They may think it's addition by subtraction, but it's like, dude, optics-wise, it's not a good look to have your first women's signing and considered by many to be one of the pillars. Also, here's a funny little fact. CM Punk in AEW said that Britt Baker to MJF Britt Baker was basically a pillar. Like, she's one of the standards of this company. And, like I said, it wasn't perfect. There was some politics going on behind the scenes. I think, she was thrust into a position that kind of maybe got some power to her head. Like, obviously, it's unfortunate what's happened with her relationship with Adam Cole. They were together, and then obviously they're not together anymore. I don't think that has anything to do with how this has turned out whatsoever, but it's just, man, if you're Tony Khan and you've handed the keys off to Mercedes and you try to do this as your biggest women's match of all time, and any of you AEW fans who are acting like, you couldn't utilize Britt Baker, it's crazy. But I think maybe this was, in some people's eyes, maybe this was just a lost cause, and they think it's addition by subtraction. That doesn't mean it's not a loss, because it's just not, optics-wise, it's not a good look for this company to see one of their OGs, one of their originals, walk out the door and go to, again, another original, walk out the door and go to the other place. I don't know where she'll situate herself, but it seems like this is heading in a certain direction. Jonathan Coachman, you can say what you want about his sources. He's been on this for a minute. And then obviously, the social media post was about as big of an indication as you're going to get. She's not coming back to AEW. We haven't seen her in a year. She was heavily pushed around this time. And it's wild. It's wild to think about. 6 years ago, this was one of the key cornerstones of women's wrestling, at least in AEW. And now she's gone. She's gone. Really crazy to think about. Anyway, a lot more coming here on the channel. I've got another women's story. What in the heck is going on with Jamie Hayter? We got to talk about that. we also got to get into more of this Goldberg Gunther story, because a lot of people are being stupid on the internet, and I need to address that. So we'll talk about that here on the channel. Thanks for subscribing and watching. I'll see you guys. Bye-bye.